Welcome back to Namaste JavaScript, and today we are going to study async await. I know this is the most awaited topic of this series, and I have come here to teach you. Okay, if you are a JavaScript developer, then you should definitely know async await. You cannot skip it, right? It will be useful for your daily coding as well as for your interviews. Okay, I will cover everything today about async await. We will dive deep into this topic. Okay, so first of all, we are going to cover these topics. What is async, right? We will see what is async, then we'll see what is await, then we will also see how async await works behind the scenes. Okay, we will dive deep into it, right? And then we will also see some examples of how async await is used in real life. Got it? And then we will see how we can do error handling, how we can handle errors in your async await. Then we will also talk a little bit about interviews, right? If you get interview questions around async await, how you can handle that. And then we will also see what is the difference between using normal promise.then catch and then why we use async await, right? Basically, this whole thing will cover everything about async await. So let's get started. Now let me tell you what is async, right? So async is a keyword that is used before a function to create a async function. And what is async function? Let me show it to you with the help of code. Okay, let us create our async function, and now I will tell you how async functions are different than normal functions. Okay, so if I have to create a async function, I will write async async, and then I will write function and then the name of the function. Let's call that as get data or something, right? Any name you can give it, right? So this is a async function. Now, how is it different than a normal function? The first important thing to note over here is note down in your notebook. Okay, keep taking down notes as I tell you, right? The first important thing is this async function always returns a promise. Okay, so by property of an async function will always return a promise. Okay, it should always return a promise. Now there are two cases. Either when you will write a return, if you write a return statement inside is either you return a promise from here, right? Either you return a promise, right? That will be a valid async function. Or if you don't return a promise from here, right? Suppose if you don't return a promise from here, suppose you returned a value, right? It can be any value, string, numeric, float, boolean, any value, right? Suppose if you return a value which is a non-promise value, right? Suppose if I return this, right? Let me return this string namaste, right? If I return this string namaste, what this function will do, it will basically take this value, wrap it inside a promise, and it will return it. Got it? Let me tell you once again, either you return a promise from this function, right? Then it will be completely fine. If you don't return a promise from it, if you return a value, then this function will automatically wrap this value inside a promise and will return a promise. Okay, but this function will always return a promise. This is the important thing to note over here. Okay, so either you return a promise, or if you return a promise, it will again wrap that value inside a promise and it will return you a promise from it. Got it? So now let us just call this function. Let's say I have constant data is equals to get data. Okay, I am calling this function, and whatever the return value will be, I will get inside this data. Right? And what will I get inside the data? Can you guess? Promise, right? So basically this get data will return me a promise, right? And let me just show it to you, right? Let me do a console log and show it to you. If I do console log of data, let me save my file. See this. So it returned a promise over here, right? This returned a promise. The status is fulfilled and the result is namaste. Got it? So as I said, this get data will always return a promise from itself, right? Now what happens is we have got this promise inside this get data, right? And how do you get this actual data, right? How do you get this data out of this promise, right? This is basically a data promise, right? It's not basically data. How do you get this namaste out of this promise? How do you do that? If you have seen my previous episodes of promise, you will obviously know that how do we handle promises, right? We use a .then method, isn't it? So because this data promise is a promise, I can just do a data promise .then, and then I can do a res this is a response, and then I can just do a console.log of this res, right? This result, response, whatever you may call this as. And once I get this data, once I get this response from this promise, once I take the data out, so this console.log, this result will be actual namaste. Okay, if I save this, so it will be namaste over here. Hope you would have understood. Let me recap it quickly once again. So async basically is a keyword that is used to create async functions. Okay, and how do you create a async function? Async function and the name of the function. Now the property is it always returns a promise. This is the thing you will have to remember, and you will have to tell your interviewers also if they ask you in the interview. Okay, you will always have to return a promise. And if this function does not return a promise by itself, it returns a value, then it will automatically be wrapped inside a promise and it will return a promise. In any case, it will always return a promise. This is a catch over here than a normal function. Got it? So this is how it works. And now I returned a value from here, right? Let me also show you an example. What if I returned a promise from here, right? How does it work? Okay, so let's create a promise for that. Okay, and then try to return it. Got it? How do you create a promise? Right? So hope you know it, right? I have taught you in the previous episodes. If you don't know it, please watch them also, right? It's available for free on YouTube. Why not watch it, right? I dive deep into promises in that video. Okay. So what we will do is now let us create a promise. Let's create a promise P, and then let's call it new promise, and then it will have a resolve and reject, right? Let's create a very basic promise. Let's do nothing inside it. Let's just resolve it, right? Let's just create a normal promise. Let's just resolve it, and let's put some data after it resolves. Let's resolve it with some data, right? Let's give it a normal string. Let's call it as promise resolved value. Okay, so random, right? So basically, and now we have this promise, right? So let us try to return this promise from here, right? If I return this P promise from here, what actually will happen? I have a question for you. Will this promise be again wrapped into another promise and will be returned? No, my dear friends. If this return value is already a promise, then it will not wrap inside a promise. It will be returned as it is. So basically this data promise will be, this P will go inside data promise. Right? Basically, this when this data promise, this get data will be called, it will just directly return that P. Okay? This P will get inside data promise, and if I do a data promise.then, it is exactly like doing a P.then, right? Because data promise is P. Got it? So basically, if I will save it, so it will give me a promise resolved value. Okay? It will give me the value of this promise. Got it? So what happened actually? It returned P, and this P came into data promise, and now when I do a P.then, right, I am trying to resolve this promise P, right? So it will just console log my result, and this result is promise resolved value. So that is why promise resolved value is printed over here, right? So hope you would have understood what is this async function, right? And now let us just move to see how we can use await along with async function and how we can handle actual promises. What is the true use of this async await, right? Which everybody talks about. Let us move there. Before I teach you the combo of async and await, let me just get rid of all of this and let us start from the beginning. Okay. And please listen to me carefully because I am going to teach you very important thing now. Okay. How do we use async along with await? Okay. So first of all, listen to me. First thing, async and await combo is used to handle promises, right? Async and await combo is used to handle promises. Okay, this is an important thing to note down. Please note down in your notebook, right? Async and await are used to handle promises. But before async await, how do we use to handle promises, right? And why do we even need async await, right? Do I really need async await? So first of all, we will see how we used to handle promises before and how we used to handle promises now after async await, and then we will compare both of them. Okay, that will be a great way to learn, right? So let me just teach you that, right? First of all, let me show you how do we used to handle promises before async await. Okay, how, right? So if we have a normal function, right, this is not a async function. If we have a normal function, let's use the same name, get data, right? So how do I handle this promise? Suppose if I want to handle this promise p, how do I handle this, right? I can do a p dot then, right? I can do a p dot then, and I can have a result over here, and I can just do a console log of result, right? And then if I call this get data method, over here, what will happen? This p will resolve, and on the console promise resolved value will be printed, isn't it? Let me save it. Let me refresh the page. See this, promise resolved value is printed over here. Got it? It is simple. Everybody knows that, right? Now, let me tell you how do we handle this thing using async await, right? And then I will tell you the difference between both of them. Okay? That is how you will compare, right? Why are we even needing async await, isn't it? So now, if you have to use async await to handle this, right? So I'll show you. So first of all, you have to create a async function, right? Async async function, right? And let's call this function as handle promise, right? Let's give it a name, handle promise. Got it? If we have a name, handle promise, now suppose if we have to handle this promise p from this promise p from this async function, how do we handle that, right? Let me show it to you. Let me first of all comment this down. Okay, let me comment this down now, right? How do I handle this? So you will have to use a keyword await. Okay, here comes the principle. Here comes the keyword await. Principle of async await is that you will use the word await in front of the promise. In front of the promise. Okay, so what is the promise? You will await p. Await p, not promise. It is autocomplete. Good. So await p. Okay, so instead of doing a p dot then, you will do await p. And now when you will do await p, this promise will get resolved, and the data will come into a constant variable. Let's call this as val, right? Let's call this as val for value, right? I'm just using it. So this is how you handle promises using async await. Okay, let me recap it once again. So you will use the keyword await in front of a promise that has to be resolved. Okay, so await p, this p is a promise. Okay, and now this value will contain the value of this resolved promise. Okay, this val will be this promise resolved value. Got it? And if I do a console.log of val over here, so what will be the in output, right? And let me call my handle promise over here, right? If I call this, let me save it and let me refresh the page. This is promise resolved value. Got it? This is promise resolved value over here, this val. So this is how you handle promises using async await. Important things to note over here is, first of all, we introduce a keyword await, right? What is this await? Note down in your notebook that await is a keyword that can only be used inside a async function. Important thing to note, please note it down in your notebook that await can only be used inside your async function. Note it down quickly, right? And await can only be used inside an async function. Please note this down. It's a very important thing to note. Okay, if you try to write await over here, right? If I write await and a function, it won't work. This will throw an error, right? It will just throw an error. If you'll do something like this, it will not work. JavaScript will not allow this to happen. If I save this, see this, it will give me a syntax error, right? This is a syntax error. Okay, so always remember that await can only be used inside a async function, right? And you write this await keyword in front of a promise, right? And it resolves the promise. Got it? So now this is how you handle promise using async await. Now this is the easy stuff, right? And everybody on the internet is talking about this. You will see several examples of it. But now let me show you a very important difference between normally handling promises and handling using async await, and why this async await is special. Right? I will show you why this async await is special. Okay? So I will play with some code now, right? Listen to me very carefully. Okay? Now I will actually show you what is the difference between handling the promise using async await and the normal older way. Okay, it is very interesting. Please keep your eyes and ears open, right? Because this is going to blow your mind. Okay, so first of all, but before showing you that example, I want to modify my promise a little bit, right? So right now my promise is resolving very quickly, right? It is just a normal function and it is just resolving very quickly. Let us try to make a promise like a actual promise, right? So basically a promise is something which does not finish quickly, right? It takes some times to execute, right? That is why we wrap it inside a promise, like making an API call. It does not happen immediately. It takes some time, right? That is why it is a async operation, isn't it? So let us try to do that, right? How do I do that? I will resolve this promise after some time, right? This will not happen immediately. Okay, let us fake it, right? We will fake it using a set timeout. Okay, and this promise will only be resolved. We will resolve this promise after certain interval. Okay, or after some timeout. Let's call this as 10 seconds. Okay, let me give it 10 seconds. You will write 10,000 over here. These are 10,000 milliseconds. Okay, so what will happen is our promise will only resolve after 10 seconds. Okay, our promise will only resolve after 10 seconds. You don't see anything over here. After 10 seconds, see this. After 10 seconds, this has popped up over here. Now, let me show you an example of how is async await is different than handling the promise is a normal way. Okay, so for that, I will have to boggle your mind a little, right? Let me ask you a question. Okay, let me first of all comment this down. Let us use our older way of handling promises. Okay, let us use our older way of handling promises. This was our older way of handling promises. Now I will play with the code a little bit. Okay, I will just add a console.log over here, right? Now, and let me add a Namaste JavaScript. So now tell me what will be printed first, Namaste JavaScript or promise resolved value? What will be printed first? Right? When you will call this get data, what will be printed first? Tell me, right? So you are absolutely right. First of all, this Namaste JavaScript will be printed. Then the promise will be resolved after 10 seconds. Okay. Shall I show you in action? Okay. For people who don't know, let me save it. Let me refresh the page. See this. Namaste JavaScript is printed. And now after 10 seconds, my promise will be resolved. Basically, how this function will run is, it will basically keep this callback function. It will see this. Now after 10 seconds, this has come up, right? So what it will do is, as I told you in my previous episodes, right? Time tied and JavaScript waits for none, right? Time tied and JavaScript waits for none, right? JavaScript will not wait for anything. So what will happen is, as soon as this get data function will be executed, it will register this promise and it will take this callback function and keep it separately, right? Till it is resolved. And it will continue executing. Then the JavaScript will move on to line number, after 26, move on to line number 27. It will not wait for this promise to resolve. Over here, JS engine will not wait for promise to be resolved. Okay, JS engine will not wait over here for promise to be resolved. It will just move on to the next line. Okay, it will move on to the next line and it will print this Namaste JavaScript. And this promise will be resolved after 10 seconds. And once it is resolved, then it will do a console log of the resolved value. Right? This promise resolved value. That is why if you refresh the page, Namaste JavaScript is printed quickly, right? Because it does not wait for anything, right? And after 10 seconds, this promise resolved value will be printed. See this. Yes, see this. After 10 seconds, promise resolved value is printed automatically onto the console. So that's how our normal behavior of promises used to work, right? So the problem with this was, a it used to be very confusing for a lot of developers, right? A lot of developers used to think that over here JavaScript will wait, right? JavaScript will wait, or the program will wait on line number 27. It will wait for the promise to resolve, and then once the promise is resolved, then only it will go to line number 29 or 28, right? So this was very confusing to a lot of developers, and they used to think that this console log will happen only after 10 seconds, right? They used to think that program will wait at line number 27. Now let me just show you what happens in async await. Okay, and now your mind will be blown up. Okay, so now let me just go back to async await, right? And now I'll show you an amazing thing. Okay, so if I will do a console.log of Namaste JavaScript over here, right? Let me do a console log of Namaste JavaScript over here, right? Namaste JavaScript over here. What do you think? What do you think will happen? As soon as I save my file and refresh the page, what do you think will happen? Now you must be thinking, Akshay, again, Namaste JavaScript will be printed, and after 10 seconds, when the promise is resolved, this value will be printed. Will it work that way? No, my dear friends. It will not work that way. So how will it work then? This is the most interesting part about async await that a lot of developers don't understand. Lot of people don't understand. Okay, so if I save this file, if I refresh the page, see this, nothing is printed onto the console. Nothing is printed onto the console till now. And after 10 seconds, what will happen? We will see now. See this. Immediately after 10 seconds, we got Namaste JavaScript over here, and we also get promise resolve value over here. So basically, the code was waiting at line number 20. So basically, our JavaScript program, JS engine, was waiting for promise to resolve. So JS engine, when you use this async await, right? JS engine waits for that promise to resolve over there at line number 22. And once the promise is resolved, whether it takes 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 40 seconds, it will wait. The program will wait over here, and it will only go to the next line. It will only go to line number 23. Once the promise is resolved. Once basically you have got this value, this await has got this value inside this val. This is a very major difference, my dear friends. This is a very major difference. If I have to recap, right? If you see this function, right? If you see this function over here, when we were resolving our promises like this, JS engine was not waiting for us. It goes to the next line. First, Namaste JavaScript was printed, then the promise was resolved after 10 seconds. But in async await, the program actually waits over there. The program actually waits at this line. JS engine is waiting at that line for the promise to be resolved. Isn't it amazing? It is amazing, right? Right? And let me ask you one more question, right? So suppose if I have a console log on the top of this, right? On the top of this line. Suppose if I have a console log on the top of this line, how will this work? Right? How will this work? Right? So let me call this as hello world. Okay, let's call this as hello world. Okay, so when will this hello world be printed? Can you guess? So if I save this file and refresh my page, hello world is printed quickly, right? It will quickly be printed, and then once this hello world is printed, then at this line number 22, Line number 22, the program waits for 10 seconds and then Namaste JavaScript and promise resolve value is printed. Did you understand all of this? This is the whole funda of async await, right? And async await basically actually waits at that point of time. Waits, right? The program will wait over here. What if, let us resolve this value 2 times, right? And let us see how this function behaves, right? Right? Let me do val2 over here, right? Val2 over here, and let us quickly, right? Let us quickly copy this also. And now, can you guess the execution behavior now? A lot of developers get confused with this. Like, what will happen now? Tell me, my dear friends. We are resolving, we have this await line 2 times in our program. Will our program wait 2 times? Or will it run parallelly? How will it happen? How will this whole thing be printed? Are you also amused? These are the type of interview questions you will get, and you will just won't be able to answer how everything is happening, right? That is why interviewers screw you in your interview. Okay, so next time, learn this right now in this video, and next time crack your interviews with confidence. Okay, you will know exactly what is happening, right? So let me show you what happens, and let me also explain you. Refresh the page, see this, hello world is printed. Now our program will wait for 10 seconds, and after 10 seconds will you see all of it? Namaste JavaScript 2, val1, val2, both of them. Yes, see this, my dear friends. After 10 seconds, our both the promises are resolved. It was confusing for you, right? So let me try to make it even more complicated, and let us see some more examples. It will be interesting, right? So what happened is, right now we had the same promise and we were resolving it twice, right? And you would have thought that, okay, Akshay, the program will wait for 10 seconds over here, then it will wait for 10 seconds over here. So after 10 seconds, these logs will be printed, and after 20 seconds, these logs will be printed. It did not work like that, right? Let me make it a little more complex, right? And can you try to guess, right? What I'll do now is, let us create 2 promises now, right? Instead of single promise, let us create 2 promises. And now you will like pull your hairs when you will see this, okay? Let us create 2 promises, P1, and let's call this as P2. Okay, P1 is 10 seconds. Let's make P2 as 5 seconds. Okay, so the first promise over here, P1, is 10 seconds. And this P2, let's call this as P2, it is 5 seconds. So this is 10 seconds, this is 5 seconds. What will happen now? An interesting question that comes into our head is, we all know that, okay, hello world will be printed immediately, quickly. But what will happen? This promise, this JavaScript should wait over here for 10 seconds. And over here, this promise is 5 seconds. So what will happen? JavaScript will get confused, right? What will happen, right? Will this Namaste JavaScript 2 will be printed after 5 seconds, and then this will be printed after 10 seconds? Will the order change? What will happen? Right? Or will it wait for 10 seconds, then this logs will be printed, and after like 5 seconds more, right? After 15 seconds, these will be printed. What will happen? Confusing, right? This is why you are not able to answer the questions in your interviews. I want to go dive deep and tell you everything about promise, all the complicated topics. I want to cover everything in detail, right? You will never get confused with async await next time. I'm telling you, right? So if you're liking this, hit the thumbs up, right? Hit the like button in the YouTube video. It motivates me to make more such videos, right? So let me show you what will happen now. So if I refresh the page, see this P1 is 10 seconds, P2 is 5 seconds. What will happen? Let me refresh the page. Hello world is printed. Now after 5 seconds, will this be printed? No, 5 seconds are gone and this is not printed. Let's see what happens after 10 seconds. All of it is printed. See this. After 10 seconds, all of these it's printed. Isn't it interesting, right? This promise was resolved in 5 seconds, but still these lines had to wait for 10 seconds to resolve. Right? Did you understand that? Right? Did you understand that? Now it looks like that our async function is waiting for all the promises to get completed, right? Before it starts logging again. Is it? Is it? Let us see one more example where now I will reverse the order, right? Now I will reverse the order. Now I will make the P1 promise as 5 seconds, right? Now I will make the P1 promise as 5 seconds and I will make the P2 promise as 10 seconds. See this carefully and try to guess what will be the output now. How will the program work? My P1 is 5 seconds, my P2 is 10 seconds. Can you guess? So this is 5 seconds, this is 10 seconds. So what will happen? What will happen? Will the program wait for 10 seconds and then print everything? Or the behavior will be something else? It's confusing, right? I will dive deep and tell you how it is happening behind the scenes. Everything I will cover, okay? Just wait for some time. Let me show you how this is happening. Let me save this file and let me refresh the page. So hello world is printed. Now after 5 seconds, will it print? Yes! See this. After 5 seconds, our first promise is resolved and it is printed onto the console. After 10 seconds, see this. Namaste JavaScript 2 and promise resolved value. The second one is printed. Isn't it amazing, my dear friends? Isn't it amazing, my dear friends? When we reverse the order, the behavior changes automatically. This is the most confusing part about promises. A lot of people don't understand how that promise execution behavior is working. Is the program actually waiting over here or not? Or not? What is happening behind the scenes? Right? So I told you that JS engine was waiting for promise to be resolved over here. JS engine was waiting for promise to be resolved. What does it actually means? So JS engine, as I told you, that time tied and JavaScript does not wait for anything. It is true, 100% true. JS engine just appears to be waiting over here. It is not waiting. JS engine is not waiting over here. Right? JS engine is not waiting over here. If it is not consuming memory over here. It is not waiting. It has not actually occupied the call stack, I would say. Right? This handle promise function is not in the call stack when it is waiting over here. Right? Otherwise, if that was the case, then our program or our page will freeze. Our page has not frozen. Our page has not frozen while we are doing this. Okay, then if it is not actually waiting, so this statement that JS engine was waiting is not true at all, right? It is basically, it looks like the JS engine is waiting, but it is not true at all. Now, if the program does not wait, then what does it do actually? How does it work behind the scenes? This is what I wanted to tell you. Listen to me very carefully. You would be amazed by knowing this concept. So the behavior, how it works when you use async function, right? So let me just get rid of this. Let me now tell you how will this program work. When this function will be executed, it will go line by line because JavaScript is a synchronous single-threaded language, okay? Now let me show you the call stack also, okay? Let us go over here in the sources. Have you seen the call stack? I love to dive deep into the call stack. I love to dive deep into these developer consoles and show you exactly how actually program is running line by line, right? Once this is clear, everything will be clear for you in async await. I'm telling you, you would have never seen such video, right? I'm telling you, right? So let me just show it to you. This is our call stack, right? Here we have our call stack, right? Let me show you my call stack. And let me also increase this, right? And what I will do now is I will put some, right? Let me just save it. I will put some debuggers over here, right? I will put a debug point first of all over here as soon as as soon as this function is called. Then I will put after first promise. Then I will put after second promise. Okay. Now, and you have to now carefully see what happens inside this call stack. Before I show you how this program will execute over here, right, using these debug points, first of all, let me show you how it will execute in theory. Okay, how it will execute in theory. Okay, so suppose if we have this call stack over here, right? This is call stack, and right now the call stack is empty, right? This call stack you see over here, right? This call stack is empty, right? Basically call stack is the place where every function works, right? It will come and it will work, it will execute, our code is executed, right? So what will happen now is, as soon as this handle promise function is called, right? So it sees that, okay, there are two promises which needs to be resolved. There are two promises which needs to be resolved, and these promises are taking their own time in resolution. Okay, so basically there are two promises, right? P1 and P2. They will be resolved at some point of time, right? After 5 seconds, after 10 seconds, or after, we don't know what time it will resolve. What will happen, right? We don't know actually when these promises will be resolved, right? These are async promises, isn't it? Async promises. So these async promises are registered. Right now, I'll tell you how will things work inside call stack, right? So initially the call stack is empty, right? Initially the call stack is empty over here. As soon as we call this handle promise function, so this handle promise function will come inside your call stack, right? Now this handle promise function will come inside your call stack, and because JavaScript is what? Is a synchronous single threaded language, right? It has only one thread, it has only one call stack. So it will start executing all of this one by one. Okay, it will start executing these lines one by one. So first of all, it will execute this line 26 and it will log to the console, right? It will log hello world to the console. Okay, this will happen. Now it will go to line number 28 after that, and it will see that there is a await P1 over here. It will see that there is a await P1 over here. Now there are two cases, right? Will this handle promise stay over here and wait for the promise to resolve? No, my dear friends. JavaScript does not wait for anything, and this handle promise function execution will suspend, right? This is the important thing to note. The handle promise execution will suspend, right? It will suspend, and this will move out of call stack. It will not block the main thread. Okay, it will not block the main thread, it will not freeze your page, so that if any other events are happening, they can execute inside call stack, because JavaScript just have one call stack, right? So when it sees a await function, when it sees a await over here, this function execution suspends for that time. Okay, it suspends for that time and it will wait. Now it suspended on this line. Now it will wait till this P1 is resolved, and once this P1 is resolved, then it will move ahead, right? Then only it will move ahead. Got it? Once this P1 is resolved, then only it will move ahead. When will this P1 resolved? This P1 will be resolved after 5 seconds, right? This P1 will be resolved after 5 seconds, right? So what will happen? After 5 seconds, this call stack will remain empty, but after 5 seconds, handle promise function will again come, right? Because now this promise is resolved, right? So handle promise function will again come inside this call stack and will again start executing, but this time it will start executing from where it left. Important thing to note over here is handle promise function will start executing where it actually left at line number 29, right? And it will just start from here. It will log Namaste JavaScript, it will log the value, and it will reach at this point. It will reach at this point and it will see whether this P2 is resolved or not. It sees that P2 is not yet resolved because it has just been 5 seconds, right? And the P2 will resolve after 10 seconds, right? And the P2 will resolve after 10 seconds. Isn't it? So what it will do, it will again suspend it will not block the call stack basically, right? It will again suspend the execution, right? It will again suspend the execution. It will move out of call stack and the call stack will be free. Okay. And then once the P2 is resolved after 10 seconds, now handle promise will again come back to call stack. Handle promise will again come back to call stack and it start executing from the place it left. That means line number 33, and then it will execute Namaste JavaScript 2 and val 2. This is how the program will execute, my dear friends. So if you will see clearly, what will happen is hello world will be logged immediately, right? And then after 5 seconds, Namaste JavaScript and this val will be resolved. Okay, after 5 seconds, and then the program will suspend, right? The execution will suspend. And then after 10 seconds, this handle promise will again start the execution. So basically, JavaScript engine isn't waiting for this promise to be resolved. Listen to me very carefully. JavaScript engine isn't waiting. This call stack over here, this handle promise will not keep waiting in the call stack. JavaScript engine isn't waiting. It is quickly executing everything. But handle promise will suspend the execution of that promise of that function. Sorry, handle promise will, if you'll see it, if the promise is not resolved, it will suspend the execution, and then it will continue once that promise is resolved. Hope you understood that, right? Please bear with me. I know this can be a little confusing. Please watch it once again. But let me explain it to you. One more example, right? The example that I took, because it will settle in your head, and this is very important. If you understand this, you will never fail in your async await ever. I'm telling you, my dear friends, this is very, very important concept. Nobody teaches this, yaar, right? I mean, nobody. I have practiced a lot. I have played with code a lot. That is when I have got this knowledge, and I'm sharing with you all for free over here on YouTube. Please appreciate, please like this video, please share this on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on all social media with your friends, because this type of knowledge is what we need in JS developers today. Got it? So this is async await video. Let me show you one more example. So suppose if we had a reverse example, right? The first promise was 10 seconds and the second promise was 5 seconds. So let us see this in theory, how it was working, how it will work. Let us see this in theory. So how it will work is hello world will be printed immediately, right? Now this P1 is 10 seconds, right? Now this P1 is 10 seconds. So handle promise was executing. It saw that P1 is not resolved yet, right? P1 is not resolved yet, right? So the handle promise will move out of call stack and it will wait for P1 to be resolved. It will wait for P1 to be resolved, and the P1 will resolve after 10 seconds, right? After 10 seconds. So till this P1 is, see, JavaScript is a synchronous language also, right? It can't just move to P2 because, see, P2 was resolved in 5 seconds already, right? P2 was resolved in 5 seconds. But JavaScript program will wait for line number 28 to complete, then only it will go to 29. Okay, then only it will go to 29. So over here, the function execution will suspend, right? After 10 seconds, this line will be printed, this value will be printed, and then it will move to await P2. And when it will move to this line, right? Now, by the time it moves over here after 10 seconds, it sees that P2 is already resolved, right? P2 will already be resolved by that time. So it will quickly print after 10 seconds, it will print Namaste JavaScript, this value, Namaste JavaScript 2 and Namaste JavaScript value 2. All of that will be printed after 10 seconds. This is how the function execution will work, right? This is how async function works. And when you are as a developer, when we will see as a developer, when we write code, we feel that, okay, the program JavaScript is stopping over here. It will wait over here. And then after that, it continues. Yes, but JavaScript is not waiting, my dear friends. Function execution is suspended. JavaScript is doing its job, right? The call stack is empty. If anything else is coming into the call stack, it will handle it quickly, right? JavaScript does not wait for anything. But over here, it looks like the program is waiting over here. The program is not waiting, right? The program is not waiting. If there were more functions, if there were more event handlers, meanwhile that 10 seconds, right? The 10 seconds will be taken for promise to resolve. If meanwhile somebody is clicking onto the web page, everything will work. Everything will work as expected, right? Call stack is something which cannot be blocked, right? That is why JavaScript is amazing. It does not let call stack to be blocked, right? So this is how it works. Now let me show you with the help of these debuggers. You will be amazed to see this, right? Let us go back to our old example. 5 seconds. The first promise is 5 seconds, the second promise is 10 seconds, right? So if I save this, see this, the program waits over here. If I go back, right? So see this call stack, okay. It is very slow, right? I can't show you properly. Let me just make it 10 seconds and 20 seconds. Then I will be able to show you properly, right? So it is confusing. For me as a teacher, it is very challenges to teach you also, right? Because these all things are in my head, but I don't know how to put it out to you, right? So that you can understand this properly. But I am trying my best. If you like this video, please comment down below, right? Right, it motivates me a lot, right? All your comments, and please share it with your friends, please, right? Now let me show it to you. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, okay? What will happen? See this, if I save this file, see this, our code stops over here. See this, call stack has handle promise. See this. Now if I go back, see this, call stack is empty. After 10 seconds, see, handle promise has come up over here again, right? And now if I go run again, see, the call stack is empty now. After 20 seconds, it has come up again. After 20 seconds, this has come up again, right? After 20 seconds, see, this has come up again, right? This function has come up again. And now if I run this code, so it will print my Namaste JavaScript 2. Got it? Shall I show you once again? Right? It was very quick, right? You will have to see it quickly, right? Let me make it 20 and 40, okay? Can you wait for 20 and 40 seconds? Right, please, right? It will take almost a minute to show you this demo, but everything will be clear very importantly, right? So as soon as I save, see this, hello world is there, call stack has handle promise, right? And if I execute this, see this, call stack is empty now, right? It will wait for 20 seconds. Hello world is already onto the console, right? Over here, after 20 seconds, my handle promise will come over here, right? Is it there 20 seconds? Cool. See, after 20 seconds, my handle promise is over here. Let me close this. Now, if I go over here, see this, our console log will print these two. Now, after 40 seconds, handle promise will again come in, right? Handle promise will again start executing inside this call stack, right? You will see call stack after 40 seconds. Cool. See this. After 40 seconds, my call stack is here. And if I click on this, it will again execute this. This is how basically async await works behind the scenes. This is how program is suspended. Program is not suspended. This function execution itself is suspended. Basically, JavaScript behind the scene must be keeping a track of this handle promise and till what line it has been executed and what promise it is waiting for. Right? Everything is handled by JavaScript. You don't need to care. You just write, right? And today, these developers who use async await, they just directly write await and they take benefit of this whole complex things which is going on behind the scenes inside JavaScript. Isn't JavaScript beautiful? JavaScript is beautiful, my dear friends. It is handling all of this for you, right? And it is letting you do a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes. Right? So this is how it is. This is what I wanted to teach you regarding the behind the scenes of async await. Right? So this is what it is, right? And hope you would have understood it. If you understood this, like this video, right? Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed to. Please, right? I am as a teacher, I am just want your likes, right? That's all, right? And wish you clear this in interviews now. Right? So this concept is done. Now let me show you some, normal example of async await. Let us now not use this promise, right? Let us use actual promise, right? So generally in everyday coding, I want to show you an example of everyday coding. You don't create promises generally, right? So let me show you an example of how we can make a fetch call and handle it with async await. Right? So fetch call returns so basically making an API call using a fetch, right? Using a fetch function, right? That is a function given to us by browser, not by JavaScript. Hope you remember that. All the Namaste JavaScript folks. Cool. So this fetch function lets you make an API call. So we will make an API call. Okay. Where should I make an API call? Okay, let us make an API call to GitHub, right? So there is a free API, api.github.com, right? Go to api.github.com. Which API should we call? Let us call this API, right? User API, user URL, right? Okay, we will use this user URL API. right? This is api.github.com. We will go to user URL API. What is this API? api.github.com users/username, right? So I will put my user ID over here. My user ID, my GitHub user ID is AkshayMart7. So basically this API is used to fetch the information of a particular user, right? If I write my username, it gives me the information of my account, right? So this is Akshay Saini, founder, Namaste Dev, right? This is my website. So it gives me information about my right? This API gives me information, right? So this is the API URL. Let us make an API call to this URL. Okay. So how do I make an API call to this URL? Constant API URL. Let me write it down like this, right? API URL is this API URL. Okay. Oh my God, that's a string. So let me wrap it inside double quotes. So I have this API URL. So now I will make a fetch API call, right? API call, API URL, right? Now, let me tell you how fetch works, right? Do you know how fetch works? A lot of people don't even know how fetch works, yaar. I'm, when I take interviews, I find some people so dumb. I should not use the word dumb basically, right? But sorry sorry that I said that, but I take my words back. But I find some people, they don't know small basic things also, right? So if you are a JavaScript developer, you should actually know how fetch works, isn't it? You should know how fetch works, isn't it? I'll explain you a little bit over here, but please go ahead and read how fetch works, what fetch returns actually, right? So this fetch gives you a promise. When you call this fetch, it gives you a promise, right? How do you handle promise in async await, right? You write the keyword await in front of it, right? Write the keyword await, right? And whatever this, after this promise is resolved, whatever data it will get, it will come in. Let's call this as data, right? So constant data is equals to await fetch. So basically, now if I have to tell you, this handle promise function execution will suspend at this line itself, and it will only resume, the function execution will resume after this fetch call has been successfully fulfilled, right? Whether it is rejected or resolved, that is a separate issue. But once this promise is resolved, then only the function execution will move ahead. Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. What will this fetch return? What is the return type of this fetch? Okay. What will this fetch returns? Right. So the fetch returns a response. Okay. Fetch returns a response. That's a response object. Okay, first of all, let me just quickly tell you how fetch works for some people who don't know how fetch works. Okay, so how does fetch work is, let me just show it to you, right? So basically how fetch works, fetch function, basically it gives you, so fetch function basically is a promise, right? When this promise is resolved, it gives you a response, right? Response. Basically it gives you a response object. Okay, and this response object has a body which is a readable stream, right? And this is a readable stream. This response body is a readable stream. And once you do, suppose if you have to convert this readable stream to JSON, you will have to do something like .json. Okay, you will have to do something like .json. And this .json is again a promise, right? This response .json is again a promise, right? And when this promise is resolved, it gives you the result or the value basically, right? It basically gives you the JSON value. Got it? So how will this work? How will I write this? So basically when you will do await fetch over here, this data will get response over here, right? This data will get response object over here. And with this response object, now we will convert this data to JSON, right? We will convert. So basically this response, we will do a .json over here. We will do a .json. We will do a .data.json. And when we do this .data.json, this is again a promise. This is again a promise, right? And how do you handle promise using await? You will write await in front of this promise, and whatever we get this, right? Whatever this will return, that will be the JSON value, right? And that value will be JSON value. So basically, Let me recap it once again. This fetch returns a response. So the response objects come over here. Once this response object is here, then we will do a .json to convert that response body into JSON. And instead of JSON, you can convert it into stream also, convert it into string also, convert it into text also. There are different type of values, but I know that this API will return me a JSON, right? So to get that JSON, to read that JSON, we do something like this. This is the fetch function which I have explained it to you. It is nothing new. It has nothing to do with async await, right? This is a normal how fetch function works. You might have seen that a lot of people do this, like you must have seen this, right? You would have done something like this: fetch dot then, right? Dot then, and then you do something like this, right? Response, and then you do a response dot JSON. Do you do this, right? And then they do this then again, right? And then this result will have that actual result, right? A lot of people ask me, Akshay, how does this work? This is how you don't know how fetch works actually, right? So this is how you write it normally, right? This is how generally you write it normally. So the fetch function returns a response, then you have to convert this to a JSON, right? This is how fetch works, right? So that is why I am telling you, because whenever you will be writing code now, whenever you will be making an API call using a fetch, you will have to resolve it like this, right? And then now you will get this JSON data over here, and now you can console log it. Okay, console log the JSON value. Got it? So this is how it works. Hope you are taking notes along with me, right? Now let me tell you how this will work, right? See this, it has printed already, right? But how? See this, we have got this JSON data in our console now, right? Do you see this JSON data? We have got this data into the console now. How this program was executed? Shall I tell you verbally? So this handle promise object started executing, and it saw await over here. So it waited for this fetch, this promise to be resolved. This promise would have taken some time, right? Network call. This must have taken some few milliseconds, right? How many milliseconds did it take? It must have, if you go to network call, you will see how many milliseconds it took, right? So it took 466 milliseconds. See this, right? Over here, it took 466 milliseconds, right? So how this program was executed, let me tell you, right? So what happened was, the function was executed, this handle promise, and the execution was suspended right away, right? And it waited for 466 milliseconds. After 466 milliseconds, this handle promise function again resumed to be executed, right? And it was waiting for this to resolve, right? It waited for this promise to resolve, and then it moved to the next line, and then it waited for this data.json to resolve. Once this promise was resolved, then we got this JSON value, right? Then we got this JSON value, and over here, once we got this JSON value, then it was logged to the console. So that's how our code will run behind the scenes. Now let me just show you how we can handle errors into this async await, right? So while we were using normal promises, right, we had a .catch method, isn't it? .catch method to handle errors. But over here, we will not have a .catch method. We will basically use a try catch to handle errors. Okay, should I show it to you? Let me just show it to you. Okay, so wherever you are making an API call, right, wherever you have a async, right, async await in your code, wrap it inside a try block, right? Wrap it inside your try block. Okay, so you put this inside your try block, and then you can have a catch, right? Catch error, and then you can just do a console.log of error. Okay, if I do this over here, right, let me remove everything from the console. If I do this over here, and suppose my API URL is invalid, right? So let me just show it to you. If I save this, it will work perfectly fine, I guess, right? Let me refresh the page here. Why it is not making an API call? Save. Okay, we did not do a console log, right? Okay, sorry, my bad, right? So it must be making an API call. And I was expecting a result on console, right? My bad. Okay. So basically see this. Now we have got this. If the result is successful, then the try block will be executed, right? If your API call successfully executes, then this try block is executed, right? And the JSON value is printed. But what if the API call is not valid? What if this URL is invalid? Right? Suppose if this was an invalid URL, right? Suppose if this was a random invalid URL, let me call this as invalid random URL and something like the domain which does not even exist, right? So suppose if we are trying to make an API call there, let me show you how this will work. If I save this, see this, we got this error. First of all, the network call failed, and then it did not log. Basically, it did not even go to line number 18 or 19, right? So what I am trying to say is basically the program stopped executing at 17 and it quickly jumped onto catch block, and we caught this error over here, and we did a console log of error over here, and this error says type error failed to fetch. Okay, we cannot fetch this information. We have got this error. Here you can do whatever error handling you want to do, right? Suppose we are making an API call, we can redirect the user to 404 page. We can show a pop-up that the request has failed, or we can show whatever, we can do whatever we want to. We can handle our errors over here using a try catch. So this is one way to handle errors over here, right? Some people, one more way to handle error is, some people don't like to do this. They kind of use the old method of handling errors, right? They use async await, right? They use async await, but to handle error, they resort to the older way of handling errors. You can do one more way of handling errors is, you can do a dot catch over here, right? How you can do a dot catch over here? So, okay, so one question I have to ask is, see this handle promise basically returns a promise, right? So now we can do this promise dot catch. Okay, this handle promise is an async function. Remember what I told you in the starting of the video? Async function returns a promise, right? So this promise is returned, and I can put a dot catch over here, and I can use it, and I can use a traditional way to handle errors, right? What is a traditional way? I can just do a console.log, right? Instead of error, console.log error, and it is the same, right? See this. So you can do both ways, right? So some people like to use async await, but for handling errors, they use something like this. Some people like to use try catch. Whatever works for you, use that, right? It is upon you how you want to handle this. I have shown you both the ways of handling errors into your code. So we have done this error handling. Now let me talk a little bit about interviews, right? First of all, there can be multiple interview questions that can come from async await, right? First type of interview question is, what is async await? So first of all, if the interviewer asks you that what is async await, so don't just like randomly start explaining. No. First of all, tell your interviewers that async is a keyword which is used with function, and async functions are a different thing. And then tell them that await can be used only inside async function, right? This is kind of a recap of the episode also, right? So basically what is there? There is a async function. You can use await inside this async function, right? To handle promises, right? And these promises are asynchronous, right? So then this is how you have to explain, and then explain it with some examples, right? You can explain it with the same example I used with promises, and you can even dive deep and show them that if there are multiple promises, how do async await handles that. Tell your interviewers that how the program works behind the scenes, and once you tell that, my dear friends, your interviewer will be amazed with your knowledge. They will just be impressed by your skills. Please explain it properly. If required, try to explain what is promise also. Try to watch my promise video also if you haven't already, right? Promise video covers a lot in depth about promises. It will strengthen your promise fundamentals, right? And async await is basically majorly used for handling promises. Okay? So this is how it is. This is how you have to handle interviews, right? And explain everything. You can explain it in detail, right? How everything is working, how that handle promise execution is suspended, and all of that stuff. Got it? So this is how you have to explain in interviews. Now comes the last part of this session or this video. That what should we use? Should we use async await or should we use dot then and dot catch? Now, before I tell you the difference, I have already shown you the difference between both of them. What should I use? Before I tell you that, let me tell you that async await is just a syntactic sugar over then and catch. What is a syntactic sugar? So what I am trying to say is, when we use these async and await, right, behind the scene, JavaScript is using its own promise.then, promise.catch and all that stuff only. So basically, the only effect which is happening in the code how you write, right? JavaScript will treat your program exactly like how it used to treat the older way of writing code. So basically, that is why it is known as async await is just a syntactical sugar over promise native methods, right? It's a syntactical sugar. That means it's just a syntax play, right? Basically, behind the scene, it is already using the normal promise things. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. Now, what is better, async await or then? To be very honest, both of them are better. Async await is a new way of writing code, and sometimes, it makes a little sense to write like this. Why? Because when you see await fetch, then we are sure that, okay, we don't have to deal with callbacks, right? Remember when we do a dot then, right, we have to pass a callback, and that callback will be executed some point of time later. So you'll have to do promise chaining for that. Over here, you don't have to do a lot of promise chaining, right? So basically, you don't have to do a promise fetch dot then. It is helpful when you are doing promise chaining. It makes sense when you write code, right? So this line will only be executed once this fetch is done, right? So we are sure that this line number 17 will only be executed after this promise has been resolved. So when you write it in this fashion, right, so it makes sense to our head, and it is easier for some people to read. Okay, so it's a personal choice what you want to use, but I personally would suggest you to use await, async await. This is a new way, and it actually makes sense also, right? When you will debug your program, it will actually make sense. Okay, so my preference is use async await whenever possible. For catching errors, you can use this too, right? This is completely fine. But for handling promises, use async await, right? And why not, right? So that is what I wanted to show you. So that was all in this video. And in the next video, we will be coming with amazing things, right? We will cover more about promises. We will cover more of those topics, right? The video topic is not decided. I want your help. Please comment down below what topic should I make more videos on. I have resumed Namaste JavaScript now, and there will be more new amazing videos coming up in Namaste JavaScript season 2. Keep watching this, and please tell me in the comments, how did you like this video? Was it interesting? Did you learn something or not? Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I will soon come up with more new amazing videos. And also, let me tell you that I am also teaching React. I have also launched a Namaste React course. That course is not launched on YouTube, my dear friends. That course is launched. That's a paid course basically. I charge some fee. I have left my job to teach full time now. So I just can't rely on my YouTube income. That is very less. Okay, I have to manage a team and all. So that Namaste React is a paid course. Okay, so that paid course, if you want to learn React from me, if you like how I teach Namaste JavaScript, how I taught JavaScript, and you want to dive deep into React also, right, then please go ahead and check out Namaste React. It is available for a very nominal fee. It is not lakhs of rupees. It is very less amount, right? Please go ahead. Link is in the description. Check out Namaste React if you haven't already. And that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.